Hi, John Maxwell here. I am very excited about our time together. This moment, this time, this talk that I'm going to share with you in a moment. This has life-changing potential. So I want you to listen, obviously, take notes, obviously, but there's something deeper than just listening and taking notes. I would like for you to say to yourself and ask yourself this question: is this my time? Is this my moment? Because you see, all great leaders can point back to a time or a moment. I can. When there was a change, a pivot, a positive decision that follows us the rest of our life. I've never been one who just believes that one decision makes or breaks you, but I am one who believes that there are times such as this time for some of you that you can look back 5, 8, 10 years from now and say, you know what? Yeah, I listened to John. I took notes, but that was the day that God talked to me. That was the day when I sensed that this was my moment. In fact, I'm going to talk to you today about Change Your World. And if I'm going to use a title, the title is This Is Our Time. This lesson is all about statement 4, at a time when it makes a difference. Our time, your time, my time, our time is now. In fact, I don't want to miss my leadership time. There are a lot of things as a leader I may not get right, but I can tell you one thing: I don't want to miss my leadership time. I can still remember when I was 51 having my heart attack, and for a couple of hours it was kind of, am I going to live or am I not going to live? And when I came out on the other side, there was a sense of gratitude for life, yes, but more than that, I believe that my life was extended because my purpose was yet not completed. Well, now that I look back at that time, I realized that my life was spared for this time. This is my time. But what is more exciting to me than have my time as a leader is for us to have our time. Because if it's just my time, honestly, it'll be good, but it won't be great because you can't do anything great by yourself. But when it's our time, whatever is good for me, whatever is good for you, when we begin to be a community of leaders to step forth, it now becomes great. Not good. It becomes great. So I laminated what I'm about to read to you. I laminated. Now, you know that important things in my life, I laminate them. I just think that, I don't know, there's something special about something that's laminated. If I'd have been Moses and gone out on Mount Sinai for the 10 Commandments, I wouldn't have put those suckers on stone. I'd have laminated those 10 Commandments. I'd have looked for every Jewish pocket I could find. I'd have just been sticking in their pocket saying, read these, follow these. Well, I laminated this because I felt it was so special, and now that I'm giving it to you, I know it's special. Listen carefully. In every age, there comes a time when leadership must come forth and meet the needs of the hour. Therefore, there is no potential leader who does not find his or her time. I love that. There is no potential leader that does not find his or her time. Tragically, there are times when no leader arises to the hour. I don't ever want to be in that last sentence. Tragically, there are times when no leader arises to the hour. I never want my name in that last sentence. I want my name in the previous sentences. A leader that has found the right time. I love that quote. Recently, I did a teaching called Seize the Season. In fact, I was talking to a company when I was teaching it, and I gave them kind of a little corny phrase that I said, you just need to be talking to each other, and you need to be saying to each other, we are what? We are season seizers. We seize the season. I mean, it's here, and we're seizing it. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later because that word seize is a powerful word. And we are now entering into our season. our Change Your World season. We are now entering in our time that we need to be seizing. It amazes me how fast the fall has been. It was started off gradual, but it's not gradual now. Again, in America, I'm using that as an illustration because this is where I live, but everybody knows this at 9/11. Everybody knows that after 9/11, our congressman got on the steps and held hands and sang God Bless America and showed unity, Democrat, Republican, Independent. Now that was in 2001. Less than 20 years later, we're not holding hands. We're shaking our fists. We're not united. We're divided. And honestly, that makes me incredibly leadership sad. And so let's go to the roots for a moment of this. How did we get here? I know how we got here. And I want you to know, because I think part of knowing the context and the process of why we are where we are today creates an urgency within us to do something about it. I think there's something about awareness that creates urgency in my life and your life. Political scientist Alan Wolf in 2001 wrote a book called Moral Freedom. And he interviewed thousands and thousands of people that lived in America. And he came to the conclusion that Americans lived in a state of what he called moral freedom, and then he defined it. Here's what I want you to catch. He defined moral freedom as the belief that life is best when each individual finds his or her own morality. In other words, this is kind of the inevitable result of highlighting individual freedom above community. You see, moral freedom has some assumptions to it, very simple assumptions. Assumptions like this: if everybody does their own thing, then everything will work out for everybody. That's an assumption. It's not true, but it's an assumption. That if I pursue my own economic self-interest, the economy will thrive for all. That's an assumption. There's no truth in that. Or if I choose my own family style, then all children will prosper. Or if I choose my own moral code, then we'll just be decent to one another. The result of moral freedom is selfishness. Basically, moral freedom is where I determine and focus on me. And my interest and me are more important than you. And so it leads to selfishness until I'm going to put my rights above your rights. And I mean, after all, this is the way I believe it. So therefore, this is the way I'm going to do it. You see, that creates selfishness, which is all about me, instead of significance, which is focusing on other people. So here's my conclusion. This is kind of helping us understand where we are today and why we so desperately need to have transformation tables and learn and live good values. You see, maximum freedom for me, if I really press that, do you know what that means? That means less freedom for you. If I have maximum freedom for me, if I put maximum value on John Maxwell, there's a tendency for me to put minimum value on you. I can promise you, the moment that it's all about me, the world starts to fall apart. Because with one trifling exception, the world is composed of others. You see, moral freedom has basically emphasized that I increase, and we didn't say it, but it's the automatic response of it. If I increase, guess what? You will decrease. And that's where the great divide begins. Personal freedom has become our greatest value. And we put it above everything else. And when I put personal freedom above everything else, trust begins to fall. And what we're going to discover in the next couple of minutes is it's trust that's the core of making things work in society. And the more trust we have, the better it works, and the less trust we have, the less effective. You see, in 1964, back to America just for a moment, 77% of the Americans trusted federal government. 30 years later, by 1994, 20% of Americans trusted federal government. Well, what happened in those 3 years between 64 and 94? It's simple. We had Vietnam. We found out the government was not telling us the truth. We had Watergate. That was even worse in a way because that meant that the highest leader of our land wasn't trustworthy. Until today, 2014, think about it now, 70% of the people in America believe that most people can't be trusted. You see, what happens is the lowering of trust works this way in society. We begin to lower the trust of institutions, but it doesn't stop there. The moment that we begin to have the trust slide, it's only a matter of time till I won't trust you and you won't trust me. You see, it's not possible for me to have an untrustworthy feeling about many things and keep a trustworthy feeling towards you. And trust determines behavior. That's a fact. Social trust, in fact, I'm going to take a moment. I don't want you to miss this. I want to read this to you. Social trust is the confidence that other people will do what they ought to most of the time. That's what social trust is. It's the feeling that you're going to do what you ought to do most of the time. I say most of the time, not all the time, because we're all human. But most of the time, you're going to do, that's social trust when I think you're going to do the right thing most of the time. And social trust fails when other people do what they want to do instead of what they ought to do most of the time. And social trust is generalized faith. It's just a general faith about the people in your community. And it consists of what I would call smaller faiths. It begins with assumptions that we are interdependent, so we need each other, that our destinies are linked, and we share the same moral values. That's what social trust is. It assumes that. And here's what I know about trust, because I've led all my life. And I understand what trust means to a culture, to a society, to a team. I understand what it means to a leader. Here's what I want you to catch. Do not miss this. Whatever matters to you right now, whatever matters to me, whatever matters to human beings right now, let me tell you something. Trust is the atmosphere of which it thrives. What matters to me the most thrives best in a trusting culture and a trusting atmosphere. And what we have found is very simple. The most marginalized people in a culture are the ones who have the lowest trust factor. So for America, it's Black Americans. They believe 15% of the people can be trusted. It's also lower middle class and the working poor, which is 40% of our country. And again, they're insecure about their place in society, and they're insecure about how they financially can make it in society. And even what is more challenging, and probably the main fuel that ignites me in transformation, is that 10% of the millennials believe that most people can be trusted. In fact, 71% of the millennials believe that most people will take advantage of you if they get a chance. Okay, just fasten your seatbelts. Just stay with me on this journey just for a couple of minutes, because I'm going to put it all together. I promise you, I'm going to put it all together. You see, moral freedom without values creates insecurity. That's a fact. You give any person, and especially someone young, moral freedom, but you don't teach them good values, and it will create insecurity. And what we have in our culture today is an identity insecurity. Listen carefully. I'm just going to read it to you. All the traits that were once assigned to you by your community, you now must determine on your own. Your identity, your morality, your gender, your vocation, your purpose, and the place of your belonging. Self-creation becomes a major anxiety-inducing act of young adulthood. So what's the result of that? The result of that is that we begin to seek validation from others, and therein comes social media. Now, since I'm trying to find my own way and I'm not finding it, I've got to have somebody that validates my self-worth. So I go to social media and I want to make sure I get a whole bunch of likes. And all of a sudden, I got to make sure that people like me. For many people, it is impossible to think without simultaneously thinking about what other people would think about what you're thinking. 81% under 30 feel anxious, depressed, lonely, or hopeless at least one day a week. Okay, we're getting close, folks. We're getting close. Better values on the inside require less validation on the outside. Once I know who I am and I have lived and embraced, fleshed out good values in my life, to be honest with you, your validation of me is not nearly as important to me because I already embrace good values and have discovered self-worth. Fewer values on the inside require more validation on the outside. That's why you've heard me talk. How many times have you heard me say, you got to be bigger on the inside than you're on the outside? When I'm bigger on the inside than I'm on the outside, I'm solid. And that's why I'm so thrilled in transformation and change your world that we are values-centric. That's why I'm so thrilled that our I Lead program that's for students in school. What? Year 1, I choose good values. Year 2, I do good values. Year 3, I lead with good values. We understand that the answer to all the identity insecurity in this world is, again, helping kids discover, develop, practice, live out good values. There's a difference between a high trust culture and a low trust culture. You go around the world. If the country has a high trust culture, when there's a problem, and there's always problems, when there's a problem in a high trust culture, the people in that country or in that community say, what can we do? They were in a high trust culture, a culture that had settled values and their identity was secure. In a low trust culture, it's exactly the opposite. In a high trust culture, what can we do? What can we do to make it better? In a low trust culture, accusation begins and they point to others and say, you have failed us. You have failed us. That's what happens in a low trust culture. Everything I've given you so far is the reason for today. Because the good news is we have the answer. We have the answer. Now, let's go back to our school days. Let's go back to when you were in school. When I was in school, if the teacher asked a question, based on what the question was, I responded differently. There were times when the teacher asked a question, I didn't have the answer at all. And so I would look away. I'd kind of look down at my desk and I would, and let me tell you, I'm not eyeing the teacher. I don't call me. Please don't call. I don't know that answer. There were times when I didn't know the answer, but I didn't want the teacher to know that I didn't know the answer. And so I would raise my hand, but basically I would raise my hand kind of like this, which basically that hand is at half mast. That teacher already pretty well knows that I don't know. There were times when the teacher had asked the question and I knew the answer, but I pretty well knew that the other kids knew the answer too. I wasn't the only one that knew the answer, and so I'd hold up my hand like this. Basically, you can call on me and I can give you the answer, but all those other hands that are up like mine, they can give you the answer too, because there's nothing special about this, but if you want to call on me, I'll give you the answer. But there were a few times when I knew the answer, and I looked around at the classroom, and I knew not only that I knew the answer, I knew that they didn't know the answer. Now, my response at that moment is totally visually, physically different. When I know that I know the answer and I know that Johnny doesn't know the answer, and Susie doesn't know the answer, and all of a sudden, hey, my hand doesn't go like this now. Like, okay, I'm one of many. Just call on me, and we'll just kind of give you what the answer is. No. I'm doing this number. It's like I'm throwing a fastball. And I would kind of two-finger it while, call on me, don't miss me. Don't miss me. I know the answer. And be honest with you, teacher, I think I and you are the only two that know the answer. So call me so I can show all these kids that I know the answer. Okay. This lesson, our time together, change your world. Our time is now. We know the answer. You're like, I want us to be, I know the answer. Call on me. Don't miss me. I got it. If you just listen to me, I can tell you, I'll help all of you out. I got it. Don't miss me. I know the answer. This is our posture because we know the answer. And we know the answer not because we're smarter than anyone else. I think there are a bunch of people out there probably smarter than us. We know the answer because we've proven the answer for the last several years in other countries. This isn't theory. This is proven practice. So, let's talk about transformation. The transformation thesis is just beautiful. Transformation is possible for anyone. Don't miss that. Anyone. It's possible. If we are willing to learn and live good values, value the people around us, and collaborate with them to create a positive values environment. We know that for a fact. That's the thesis. That's what we stand on. That's the foundation. And what we've discovered is that we need to be changed so that we can be a vision carrier. Knowing that I am changed makes me a carrier. And it gives me the belief that others can be changed, and then a passion to help them. That makes me a caster. I want to move you from a carrier of transformation today to a caster of transformation. Let's be clear. We have the answer. Remember, get that hand in the air. I got it. I know what the answer is. I got it. And the answer is deep. It's about values. That goes deep into the heart and the soul of a person and a community. Our goal today is to start making it wide. Increase our influence. It's kind of like right now, we're hearing some good news that we're finding a vaccine. We're finding a vaccine, and we're getting these pharmaceutical companies and saying, hey, we got a COVID vaccine. And that means hope, okay? We can get vaccinated. Hey, we can get through this issue. Can I tell you something? We have a transformation vaccine. We have a vaccine that if we can help people take it, their life will be changed. Let me give you just quickly, a couple transformational thoughts. Number one is we is more important than me. In my early leadership years, I wanted to make a difference, and then I realized that wasn't going to be a big enough difference, so I've got to make a difference with others. Wow. Team. Together, everyone accomplishes more. Secondly, who is more important than how many? And we know this. What unites us is greater than what divides us. What you focus on expands, and when we focus on good values expand. When we focus on differences, then our differences expand. And we know, fourthly, that hope is what we give, but strategy is what we do. In the Change Your World book, we talk about the difference between optimism and hope. Optimism is the belief that things can get better, but hope is the faith that I can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue, and Hope is an active virtue. Optimism takes no courage and no commitment. Hope takes a lot of courage and a lot of commitment. Let me just put it this way. Hope requires help. If there's no help in hope, there's no hope. Reaches their hand out to help. John Maxwell team members. How does transformation happen? Let's go through the process. It's first of all, take the picture in your mind of a waterfall, top down. In other words, transformation to be successful as a strategy requires leadership. You all know Mark, and he's the CEO of everything in my life, okay? And Mark was telling me something interesting about one of our companies, John Maxwell Company, that does corporate training. He said, no matter what corporate training program we use with a company, doesn't matter the program, we've got several good ones. He said, there's one deciding factor if the corporate training really works in the company or not. And I thought, oh my gosh, Mark, what's the deciding factor? He said, leadership involvement. He said, when the leaders of a company send their employees to get the training, but they don't go themselves, they send a message, this isn't that important. He said, when the leaders get involved and they go to the training and they say, okay, hey, here we are, we all want to learn. He said, it puts that leadership training on a whole different level. That's this waterfall, top-down picture that I'm wanting you to see today. And so we go to 8 streams of influence in every culture, every country, every community: government, education, business, media, arts, health, religion, sports. I remember, this is not my only big mistake I made as a leader, but it was one of the big mistakes I made. I can remember back in the early 90s in the church world where small groups was just becoming the thing. We were all going to Korea, and there was a pastor named Cho, and he had 250,000 members, and he did it all in small groups. And I took 100 of my key leaders, and we went there, and I came back, and I said, we're going to start small groups. And the good news is, literally in one day, 3,300 people signed up for small groups. I mean, I was overjoyed. I thought, touchdown. I mean, in one Sunday, 3,300 said, I'm ready to get in small group. I'm ready to get in small group. I thought, this is amazing. And in 3 months, we only had about 100 small groups. You know what happened? I recruited people to be in small groups, but I didn't have any leaders trained to lead them. They came together, but because there was no facilitator, there were no leaders, they didn't stay together. So I called timeout, said, oops, the leadership expert didn't go train the leaders. So we took out literally a period of time. We trained about 1,000 leaders, and then small groups just went crazy. But nothing happened in small groups just because people wanted to be in small groups. Everything happened when somebody stepped up and raised their hand and said, I'll be a facilitator, I'll be a leader. You see, the success of transformation is going to be based upon how many facilitators sign up. In fact, after this training day, here's what I need every one of you to do. Say yes. Transformation, change your world movement. Don't miss it. Our time has come. My time has come. Together, we can make a difference.